Hey guys, Perdu here to tell you about the latest from Aephanemer, Utopie, out October 31st on Napalm Records. The album has 9 tracks, 51 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are a French melodic death metal band. Now when it comes to the design of this record, this is an incredibly mature record top to bottom. In my opinion, the most mature album from a design standpoint that this band has ever put together. Understanding exactly what they want out of this record and then how they're going to present that to the listener really sets this album apart. From the intro song to the 2 closing tracks, Utopie Part I and Part II, the album has a clear idea of where the starting point is, where the finishing line is going to be, and how to take the listener across the other tracks in order to create a very engaging journey. So this album definitely gives the overall record incredible playability. The design definitely propels the album forward from that standpoint. Once you get into the sound of this record, I think you're going to find an album that has a lot of the DNA of the band, at least DNA that we've seen in previous records. It's a melodic death metal album, it's a very folky sounding album, and it's a very orchestral driven record, which creates a theatrical / cinematic movie score experience at times. Now these 3 main components of this album sonically, we've seen that before. We've seen the more melodic, traditional melodic death metal sound out of the band. We've seen some folky elements here and there, and we've definitely seen some orchestral symphonic pieces becoming huge parts of the orchestral and musical side of this band. So all of that is not necessarily new. What I felt like it was new about this record is that all of these 3 elements play a very important role in what the overall sound is. And when you get to the end of the album, this is what you're going to walk away with. You're going to walk away with an album that at first and foremost is incredibly folky, very melodic, with a lot of open melodies that create a much more broader sounding record. Not as narrow, not as closing, not as cold. It's not as a cold sounding record as some of the previous albums. The melodic death metal side of the band is there, but it's there in a more folkier way. If you think of a band like Insipharum, this album kind of falls into that mold of melodic death metal, not in a more traditional way of, for example, a band like Insomnium, which we've seen from this band in previous records. And then if you look at the more orchestral symphonic side, I felt like in previous records those elements were there to help size the songs, to help give a little bit more layers and a little bit more texture, even making the tracks perhaps even richer. But on this album they were there more so as a movie score, creating a soundtrack that definitely had a deep impact how the overall sound is perceived. Now it takes nothing away from how good the overall guitar sound is on this record. I thought the guitar sound was phenomenal top to bottom on the album. Great melodies, great riffs, really emphasizing that more clear, broader, open side of their guitar sound, not going with as many dark, doomier, more death metal driven riffs, definitely changing those dynamics, but still allowing the guitars to be super impactful and predominant top to bottom, and then obviously having that orchestral side behind it to emphasize the clearness, the openness, the movie score style aspect really helps also the guitars feel more empowered but in a more melodic way. That is the experience that you're going to get. The drums on this record, not as heavy as some of the drums we've seen from them previously, but when you have an album that is very movie score like and has more of an emphasis on melodic death metal but from a folky standpoint, you also don't want the drums to be super heavy. You want the drums to be there to size the songs, to help give some width and depth to the tracks, but you don't need them to overshadow all of the other stuff that is happening. In this case, the overall melodic sense that this record puts forward, because it's an extremely melodic sounding album, extremely folky melodic sounding album top to bottom. Now once you get into the vocals, the album is completely in French top to bottom. Having songs in French, nothing new for the band once again, but going with a full-length record all in French, that was definitely something different. And specifically when you look at the essence of the sound, I think this was a perfect choice. I'm a big fan of going with your mother tongue, specifically for folk bands. And if you're going to create, and I don't consider them to be a folk band, but if you're going to create a melodic death metal folk album, definitely going French top to bottom helps. It helps from a vibe standpoint. It helps from an essence standpoint. It helps mix the songs folkier. because it's much easier to express yourself in your own native language and create songs that have a lyrical content that matches the essence of the track a lot better. So I like this option by the band. I think it matches the sound and it matches what they wanted to do sonically extremely well. My only issue with the vocals on this record is there are some songs on this album, not every song, but there are some songs on this album where the vocals feel a little bit too deep in the mix. And I think taking that approach throughout the record also showcases that there are some songs that are okay with that sort of approach, because you almost want the vocals to be a little bit better integrated into the overall tapestry of the sound. But it's not something that you want to necessarily go across every single song and plug in the same kind of model. This album had a few tracks, due to its orchestral nature, due to its symphonic score style approach, could have used the vocals a little bit more in the forefront, not necessarily top to bottom for the whole song, but in periods within the song would have been nice to have had a more versatile vocal mixture so that the track could also feel as dynamic vocally as it does musically, because this is an album that is very versatile and very mobile as far as the sound is concerned, but when it comes to the vocals it stays very stagnant and very linear all the way throughout. And I think from that side they kind of missed the point a little bit on it, because without changing the style, without changing the delivery, without changing the harsh vocals, you already have the French side there that matches really well with the sound. I think taking a more, like I said earlier, versatile approach to the vocal mix, giving some songs a little bit more predominance, or even changing that predominance of where the vocals are within the song depending of the moment of the song, I think would have given this album a more overall complete feel as far as what sound, vocals, overall integration is all about. It's still a very mature sounding record. It's still one of the most versatile albums that the band has ever released, and definitely one of the most out of box records that the band has ever done. So from that standpoint, I still enjoy this album tremendously. I think this album leaves you with a lot more questions than what it answers as far as what the next record is going to sound like, because we've seen the growth of the band from record to record, but from the previous album to this album, I think the growth has been exponential. So this album is very intriguing, is very interesting, because I don't think it closes a chapter, but it definitely starts a new one. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Chimère. Very melodic, less folky, more theatrical, with a more emphasis on melodic death metal in a traditional sense. Definitely having a symphonic sprinkle within this track helps make the song a lot more textured, a lot more richer. It has a great underlying melody throughout the entire song, and the drums on this track, while not being overpowering, they definitely help size up the track and create a foundation for this song. The overall melody, the overall nature, the overall folkiness of the track brings a Victorian spirit to the song, and I think that works really well throughout the entire track as a song that feels very compact and very robust from that standpoint. I have to close off this review with two songs, Utopie Part I and Utopie Part II. These are the two closing tracks of the record. These are two songs, but it's really Part 1 and Part 2 of a single track, if you think about it. And when you listen to it, you're going to get that same sort of experience. It's very hard to get the most out of them just with one song. You almost need both of them to have a complete picture of what they're trying to achieve. Reminding me a lot of Lorna Shore with Pain Remains 1, 2, and 3. All three of those songs work individually. These two work individually. But when you put them in the context of what the three of them bring to the table together as one, it changes the dynamics even of the individual songs. These two have a very similar perspective and a very similar output as far as what you're going to get out of them listening to them as individual songs versus listening to them as a combo. Utopia 1, very cinematic movie score style track. From the get-go, from the beginning all the way to the end. It has an incredible, almost 3-minute long intro, and it's all about the atmosphere, it's all about the movie score, it's all about the theatrical side of the sound and the song. Incredibly rich, big sounding track, amazing guitar sound top to bottom, and the vocals really match well with this movie score style, with this overall very slow burning approach that this track has. It's a song that develops and moves very methodic and very melodic at the exact same time, and then emerges into Utopie Part II. There's a sense of continuation, and there's a sense definitely of moving that score line, and there's still a lot of theatrical cinematic elements about Part II, but Part II is not as much of a movie score piece as it becomes more of a soundtrack, still within the same realm, but offering a slightly different experience. And that's where you see the growth from one track to the next. I love how these two songs close off the record. You almost lose yourself in them because they have those kind of characteristics of being more about the atmosphere and the vibe that they create, almost creating a visual with sound and vocals, and that is what these two songs do. Great tracks, great way to close off the album, really showcasing the maturity of the band to go with two songs of this magnitude at the end of a record like this. It's not something you see every day, and I really like this approach, and I felt that they almost encompassed everything else that you got throughout the entire album up until that point. These two tracks really become the climax. It's like you're climbing Mount Everest as you reach these two songs at the bottom end of the record. This is it, Aephanemer with Utopie, once again out October 31st on Napalm Records. Hit me up in the comment section, let me know your thoughts on the band. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.